Well, thank you, Vic. I'm so glad to be back. I really wanted to have an opportunity to speak more in depth about poltergeists because I feel like the last episode I went through a lot of my own experiences, but I didn't get to what I really wanted to talk about because there is so much conflicting information about what a poltergeist is. And yes, I am still out of my house. I don't speak about it inside my house. Speaking about it is a dangerous thing, in my opinion, and a lot of other people's opinions, who I really value. People in the paranormal community, be quiet. Be very quiet. If you're having a fight or you're having a discussion or you want to talk about a poltergeist, take it outside. Don't talk about it. You don't want to bring it up, invite it in. You want nothing to do with it. So I'm sitting outside in my car. It's 57 degrees in Phoenix, and I feel like I should be in a parka. I'm so cold. I wanted to let your listeners know that I'm really frustrated because there's a ghost hunting show, and I don't know which one it is. I really don't. And they keep saying, after the end of the show, they keep saying, well, you should really have a Reiki master come in and get these demons, ghosts, whatever they are, out of your house. That's not what we do. I'm a Reiki master. I'm a Reiki teacher, a Reiki crystal master, and a aromatherapist, etc. I'll go through others, but we don't do that. I would never do that. I'd be so scared. I would never go in there and do that. And it's really frustrating because the way they talk like we're all qualified, and it's really inflated on that show. I mean, we may sweep up a tiny little piece after everything is done on a show. And I know they have to inflate things and make them more dramatic and make them really watchable and make sure that, you're going to be riveted to that show. But don't for a minute call up a Reiki master and say, come over and get this ghost out of my house, because they're not going to do it. They're not going to be able to do it. Now, they may work in some sort of conjunction with a clergyman, an exorcist, a shaman, that type of thing. But even then, they're just going to sweep up little pieces. They're not there to hold anybody's hand. They really are just there as a janitor, basically. I'm an ordained minister, and I wouldn't do it. I mean, I'm just not qualified for that. You really have to find the correct people to do something like that. And you can do it several ways. My suggestion would be, if you have any kind of a situation, this just does not apply to just a poltergeist situation. But if you have a situation where you feel like you need to get a house blessing, or you need to get something out that needs more work, go to somebody in the paranormal community. And that can be real iffy too, because you have a lot of people out there who will take your money and won't give you the correct information. So you may have to get 2 or 3 recommendations in order to pick the right person who's going to steer you to another person. It may take you a while to find the genuine article. I have a wonderful girlfriend, one of my just dearest friends, who is phenomenal. She's an evidential medium, and she will and I will clear out, we call them spiritual dust bunnies. We'll clear a house, but we won't go in and exercise a house. Now, she would come over to my house because she's a friend of mine and help me, but she does not do that for a living. She doesn't do anything like that. So please, if you have anything like that, make sure you do your homework and you find somebody who can help you, honestly help you. And a lot of times, if you go to the clergy, they may brush you off, so then try another one, or go to a different religion, or go to a shaman. I found, I was really on the fence about shamans because I didn't know that much about them. But I worked in a spa, and it was a big spa, and it was a famous spa. And let me tell you, the shaman really took care of things. He took care of the clients, but he took care of us too. In our relaxing room, or our break room, they called it the relaxing room, it would get real dark and there would be a gray pall hanging over it. And he would come in and he would do his thing with saging and feather work and crystals. And all of a sudden it would be light again. The air would be normal. I don't know how he did it. I have no idea. I don't have that skill. But, if you can find someone who, like that, who can direct you to somebody who actually works with people getting those things out of your house, getting them gone. That's the main thing. And you do have to find somebody trustworthy because that's where it's at. I mean, they'll take your money, but they may not be of any help whatsoever. Now that I've gotten over that rant, oh, please. I know there's so much division on this subject, but please, if you have a problem in your house, do not try a seance or a Ouija board. Now, this is just coming from me. This is not coming from any parapsychologist or any paranormal authority or anything. It's just what I've seen in my own experience and my own circle of friends, colleagues, if you will. Don't do it. I mean, if you can imagine, you have a house and you have a front door and it's wide open, and you have windows and they're wide open. Everything in your house is wide open. Nothing's locked. Everything's wide open. You have a basement, wide open. Anybody can come in. They can just waltz right in. And you know darn well, good people are not usually going to come through your house. Bad people will come through your house. They might steal something. They might hang around and bother you. They might just be there just to irritate you. They might pretend they're somebody else. It's like you're opening a door to something you know nothing about, especially, and I'm talking about when you have something in your house that you don't know about. You don't know. Are they a ghost? Or, are they an imp? Is it a demon? Is it a poltergeist? What is it? You don't want to open another door because maybe something else will come through. And that is not a good thing. So the Reiki thing, I'll go back to that for a minute because even though I had a little rant over it, Reiki comes into the picture because it comes to a Reiki person who's been indoctrinated as a beautiful gift from our Creator. And we're channeled. It's not from us. We do not heal a person. It comes through us. So if you can imagine like a Father God, it comes from He, through me, to thee. So we're just the vessel. So we just help. And there's a lot of ways we can help, but we can't direct that spirit or that poltergeist out. We just can't do it. We can do a lot of healing, and we can do a lot of emotional work, and we can Reiki an air conditioner, a glass of water, a dog, a person, the future, the past. We can do things like that, but we cannot do anything that God does not approve of. That's not God's way. So if you've got something in there against God, we're not going to be able to do it. There are definite psychic laws you just can't avoid. It's interesting with Reiki because when you heal people, or you try and heal people, I should say, we don't heal. You have a reaction with your hands, and they get real hot and they tingle, and you don't even touch the person or the object. It's an energy flow. So you can direct it, and you can direct it toward the whatever the object may be, the ghost or the whatever. You can beam it to them. But again, you can't get it removed. It's an impossibility. We can only ask for good. We can only ask for the outcome concerning what we want. But like I said, our Creator gives His loving energy through us. That's all we can do, all we can hope for. And again, like I said, I'm an ordained minister. I'm not going into any house. Anybody who wants me to exercise a house, I'm not. I don't do that because I don't have experience doing that. Other people do that. So on that note, my life, I'll just do a real quick background on myself. My life started in the best town. It was like a Norman Rockwell painting come to life. It was a middle class Wisconsin town. The streets are real narrow. The old fashioned lights are still there. There are no backyard fences, so you actually know your neighbor. But everybody knew the haunted houses and the haunted areas and the haunted gravestones. Everybody knew. The adults knew. And when you became an adult, you knew. It wasn't something made up. I mean, people had actual experiences. Nobody did anything as far as I know. They just were there. It wasn't a dramatic thing like you see on ghost hunting shows. It was not anything that you had to be afraid of if you were on the street or if you were walking past. If you went into the house or you went into that particular cemetery or you were near that kind of a situation, then you might want to take heed and look out for something. But other than that, they make a really big deal out of things that aren't necessarily as traumatic as they look like on TV. I'm not talking about poltergeists because that's a different thing. Anyway, like I said, I just had a normal, everyday upbringing. It was a wonderful place in the middle of, and if you're dog man people, Vic has a wonderful podcast, and it's all about dog men. We were in the center of Wisconsin's dog men. So it was a very interesting place to grow up. I never saw one. I always looked for something like that. But the area was beautiful. Forested lakes. It's just a beautiful area. It was conducive to spirit energy. There were limestone cliffs all around us. So it was not strange that there were incidences of spirit energy and things that went on. And it's funny because I grew up in a house that was over 100 years old, and it wasn't creepy. And my friends all grew up in houses that were at least 80 years old because it was an old town. Nobody thought anything of it. I mean, nobody wanted to go into their basements because we all thought they were creepy. But really, I didn't know in my young years anybody who had really terrible experiences in those houses. So that was my town. People stayed at their jobs, small town, great place to live, wonderful. When I was growing up, and of course still now, I have 2 sisters, and I grew up with a mom and a dad, and we females had stuff happen. I saw shadows, and I saw little monkey-like creatures crawling around on my radiator because, of course, the old houses had radiators. They didn't have forced heat or any such thing, and nobody had an air conditioner. That was just unheard of. So they were like little monkey creatures, and I was laughed at by my parents and told that they were not true, so they weren't true. So I never saw them again. They were just not true. But we girls and my mom always happened to us, had our names called, always, loud. And it was daytime. It was falling asleep. It was while we were asleep. And it wasn't just a kind of a mental thing that happened, because it happened in the daytime too. And it was loud. It was really loud. And after a while, you get crabby and you go, what? What do you want? And you never knew what they wanted, but it was loud. So you did have odds and ends happen. It was kind of weird. And I grew up there, got married just after I turned 19. The whole family after that moved to Arizona. And I told you about the backyards being open, because when I moved to Arizona, everything is closed up. There is no such thing as a backyard free. Everything is blocked in. So you don't know your neighbors. You don't know anybody. Really takes a lot to live here, because you don't know anybody. You don't get to know anybody unless you work or you're in a group or something like that. Fast forward a little bit more. I divorced my husband. It was really weird, because 10 years before I got divorced, I had a really good girlfriend. As she was walking across the threshold of my house, my husband's house, in my ear, it said, "This woman is going to marry your husband." Now, that was 10 years before I even thought about divorce. Now, I don't know where that came from or who said it, but those things went on all the time. They just, happen. One time I had planned a trip to Fiji, and I had a voice say, "Don't go to Fiji. You'll go one way, but come back another." And sure enough, there was a coup that happened while the group was there. So they all got home safe, but maybe I wouldn't have. It was just weird. Things happened like that all the time. After I got divorced, I found my ex-husband, this same woman, did marry my ex-husband. I set them up on a date because he needed a wife. And I set them up on a date, and they got married. They got married. And I was really glad for him. But I lived singly. I had a couple of serious boyfriends. I had a successful business. I kept getting stronger paranormal activity in my homes. Fast forward a little bit more to about 2005. I had sold my business. I'd become an esthetician, which is a person who does facials and body treatments and things like that. And I had worked in this big spa. And again, I was living in my own home. I had my own car. And that's another thing you can ask. You can ask if somebody's died in the house. And I always ask if the house is haunted, because I want them to take their people with them, because I always bring my own people with me. Dogs, people, relatives, whatever. I don't want their people. So I always ask that. And I became engaged to a man who was controlling, but not in my life, because I had my own deal going. I was so stupid. In my head, it said, run like the wind. But stupid me, I married him. So I left my job, sold my house, and then things changed. And that's where the bad energy started. We lived basically in 2 separate areas of the houses. He had different houses. And in Arizona, we lived in a house on a mountain, and it was called Black Mountain, and it is black. The desert is actually quite green. Lots of cacti, lots of trees, desert trees. I mean, nothing like the oak trees or anything like that. But the mountain is black. And it has cacti and everything, but it's black. You drive past it, you see it in the distance, it's black. It's very strange. And he would have a huge personality change when we were there. He was surly and nasty, and my jewelry would move from one place to the other. And I was in one of the rooms that I would gift wrap packages, and the door slammed shut. And it was a creepy, creepy house. And it was new. It was only about 40 years old. And to me, that was new because I'd always lived in old homes. Anyway, he also had a house in California in a town called Coronado, and it was just a short ways to the ocean. I think it was we were like 2 blocks from the ocean. We heard the ocean. We constantly heard the ocean waves, and, you become accustomed to that. It's a very military town. We had a listening station very close to us, and what do? They listen. So you don't hear a lot of what's going on. And we were miles away from the military installation where they ran the jets and did the shooting and the whatever target practice, whatever they did, and the SEAL training. So we had the listening station close to us. And we traveled between the 2 homes, so it was impossible for me to hold down a job, because I always say, keep your day job, at least for a little while, because I had sold my house. I quit my job, I was in the marriage, and that house was huge. It was huge. And like I said, we lived basically separately. We had separate bedrooms, bathrooms. He had a library. I had a library. Everything was separate. It was really weird. And I didn't realize that until after marriage. I didn't know. And he left we were in Arizona, and one day he left for California, and he decided once he got to California, he wasn't going to come back. So I had some medical stuff going on, and I couldn't get over there as often as I wanted to. And he would just rage at me over the phone and threaten divorce every other week. It was so scary because I had quit my job. I had sold my house. I had luckily hung on to my car, but it was so scary. I was so scared all the time. And I was so full of rage, and I wasn't allowed to get mad because he would get mad and he would threaten, and he was such a bully, and there was so much sadness from me, and I was so disgusted, and I just plain hated the whole situation. And they always say it takes years for a woman to pull the divorce trigger, and that's what happened with me. And I was always sick, and it took me a long time to walk away from that marriage because there was a lot of material security. I found out later he was the type of person very controlling. He went through every drawer, every piece of paper, everything he could find to gather info on me. I write in my diary, dear diary, today I took a walk along the beach. It's not very thrilling. And we lived in a boating community. So if you can imagine, if you hold out your hand, spread your hand out, the space in between the fingers, that's where the channels were. Everybody had a pier. Pretty much everybody had a boat. So I'll go more into that later, but you kind of get the drift. The channels led out to the bay, led out to the ocean. It was great. It was fine. I was on the upper floor, and I was lucky because I had my own balcony, my patio, everything. I had realized by that time I was really afraid to be starting over alone because I'd become older and I didn't know what I was going to do. And, I found out he had counted my clothes and he was dumb enough to tell me this stuff. I mean, so it became worse and worse and worse. And I was not allowed to raise my voice, and there were many rules, and I got to stress this. There was no physical abuse, but there was lots of emotional and mental abuse. So if the husband or wife is in a superior financial position and uses that to tear the other one apart, well, that's the word repulsive is pretty polite. I mean, I could use a lot worse words, but that's pretty polite. It's just a slow form of mental torture. And I was stupid. Like I said, I sold my house and job, quit my job. So anyway, he wouldn't come back to Arizona. He just decided he was going to stay. I just kept getting madder and madder and stuffing my feelings and just being more and more disgusted. And our whole families were back in Arizona. His family, my family, everybody. He didn't want to come back. And I wanted to be back here. And we would fight. I would be really careful because of the divorce threats. And it was very, very tumultuous. And one morning, knock, knock, knock on my door. It was about 8 a.m. And I thought, oh, geez, what is he doing up here? And I got up and I opened my door. And the weird thing about it is my door had a deadbolt on it. I never saw anything like it. I could deadbolt my door, which was a good thing because he would always leave the garage door open. God only knows what could come in, like I said. So I open up the door. Nobody's there. Second morning, knock, knock, knock. Same thing. Run to the door. Nobody's there. That night, half of the tin ceiling crashed to the floor. Probably 20 feet. The house was huge, large ceilings. And I thought, okay, this is it. Well, we had no tin ceiling. There was no such thing as a tin ceiling in that house. So I knew what was going on. I knew right away it was a poltergeist. I knew. I had no doubt. The voice in my head told me. And my good girlfriend, my evidential medium girlfriend, psychic girlfriend, called me and said, girl, you better do something about the poltergeist. I hadn't told her. She said, you better do something about that before it develops its own intelligence. And this is where I think a lot of people make mistakes, is they let it grow. In the beginning, it does not have its own intelligence. It becomes intelligent and it becomes self-aware pretty fast. But if you can catch it quick enough, and a lot of times you can't because maybe you're the only one living in the house and everything's fine, but maybe the people prior to you had it. Or maybe those people prior to them had it. So it's not as though you brought it, but I knew in my case, we brought it. And I knew without a doubt. I thought, oh, what am I going to do? So got out my books, and it's basically a poltergeist in German, poltergeist. In English, it's a noisy ghost, which ghost is not, I don't think, applies. A poltergeist is a buildup of horrible, unexpressed anger, anxiety, sadness. Now, this is my research. This is my experience. This is not anybody else's. But this is what it has always been for me to experience and for others in my circle to experience. It can manifest itself in different ways, but what it is not a demon. It's not a ghost. It's not a spirit. It's energy. Like I said, now you say, oh, I'm happy in my house, but I've got this thing. But like I said, it may be entrenched energy from years ago, from somebody, some family, some couple like myself and my now ex-husband. So you want to get rid of it as quickly as you can. It may take on a shape. It may be a black ball if you catch it early enough, or you may even see it as a demon if it's later and it's got its own intelligence. And I knew I had to get this thing out. What I did was I went back to my books and I did a lot of research, and I caught mine in time. And although both of us created this poltergeist, this negative energy, both of us did it. Long time to admit it. It was mainly me. It was done by my emotional repression. And if you don't think that's hard to admit, it was very hard for me to admit. I wanted to blame him, but I couldn't. So it was me. I got my kit together, and you don't have to be an expert, but some stuff that will help is I took one of those old-fashioned bamboo trays and I sprayed it white. I laid a white cloth over it. I placed an ashtray or whatever you would use to catch ash. I bought rose water at Whole Foods or a health food product store, wherever you can go. And it's endorsed by Edgar Casey, and it's called Heritage Store Rose Water. And of course, I bought sage. Well, I always have sage around, and it looks like a big fat cigar. I use sage bundles. I put 2 lighters on the tray and a white candle, and I put lavender spray on, which you don't have to, but I do. And then I had some crystals, and it's not the 1980s kind of new age thing, but I had a smoky quartz, which helps with clearing the air, and it was a big one with a point on the end, because I really like smoky quartz, and I think it really helps dispel things. Some rose quartz and an amethyst, and they're all really common, inexpensive things that you can buy and you can use. And also I had salt, kosher salt. Now you can put a cross on there. You can put whatever religious symbol, a Bible, whatever the Quran, whatever you use on your tray, and then kneel down for sure and say a prayer of protection for yourself. And you can enclose yourself in a white light and Google a protection prayer. Make sure you protect yourself. That is one of the main things you want to do before you even start getting rid of this thing. You want to open some drawers if you have time. Open drawers, cupboards. You don't have to go, crazy. Light the sage and then start in one corner of your house. And what I do is I say the St. Michael prayer, and you can just write it down, put it on your tray, and then, you can be any religion to use these. I mean, you don't have to be one religion. You can say the Lord's Prayer. I also use that. You can invoke any angels if you use angels to help you. I use angels. I use Gabriel, Raphael, Archangel Michael, the warrior. There's all kinds of prayers you can use to get these things, to make them mad, to get them upset, to get them to leave. And you want to open your door about a foot or so, your front door. And if you have 2 stories, open one at the top, one at the bottom. And ask your religious figure, if you have clergy, to be there with you so that, they can give you guidance. This is just what I did on my own because I knew what I needed to do. And I didn't need a particular clergyman to do this because I had enough training to do my own. I wouldn't do yours, but I knew what I had to do on my own. You talk to it. Talk to it like it's a 5-year-old having a tantrum. And you can say, I see you. I see you. I know what you are. I see you. And you don't have to be ugly. You don't want to be ugly and nasty to it and angry. You just have to be matter of fact and say, you have to go now. You have to go in the name of Jesus Christ or whatever deity you use. Just repeat it, repeat it, repeat it. Just repeat whatever prayer, the strongest prayer you have. and sage every corner. And I should have told you to light that sage and let it smoke. And, you're going to have a lot of smoke in your house, but just go to every open area. Go into the bathrooms, go into every bedroom, go everywhere and tell it has to go. We don't want it. Keep saging. Relight the sage because sometimes one lighter will fail. And, you can turn lights on if you want, if it happens at night. Mine I had off in my upstairs hallway. And I said, I see you. You can say that quite often. I see you. I know what you are. I see you. And it showed itself. And it was about 3 feet high rat. I was not prepared for that. But I said, I see you. You have to go. You go right now. And you can scold it, but you don't want to show fear or anger. And I had 2 doors, upstairs, downstairs, and they were both open. So it went out the upstairs door, and I slammed it, and I ran downstairs, and I slammed that door, ran upstairs, praying, and it was screeching on the patio. And it wasn't an owl. It was nothing like that. It was nothing I'd heard before. We have owls. We had owls in the area, night birds, all kinds of things. It was not that. And it was on my patio. It was a rat, a 3-foot rat. It was darker. People say, oh, those things, you see things that are darker than night. And I always thought, darker than night? How can anything be darker than night? It was darker than night. It was the weirdest thing. So it just screeched. It was just infuriated, and it couldn't get back in. It was done. And I never felt such a protective, holy presence before. I believed in God, and I believed in Jesus, and I was Christian, but I never felt a presence. I never felt a presence. And that was the first time I felt someone behind me and in front of me taking care of me. It was an absolute amazing, amazing feeling. I don't know if you heard the part about I was praying the Our Father, and I ran into my husband's bedroom, and I woke him up, and I said, say the Our Father, say the Our Father, say the Our Father. And he woke up, and he was mad, of course, and he said 2 lines, and he fell back to sleep. So he was no help. I held my crystals up at certain points. It was not like the 1980s crystals. I know I mentioned that before, but I got to tell you, those things really work. And you can use them in different scenarios, too. You can use them for chakra balancing, which are energy centers in the body. All kinds of different things. And I won't get into that. That's a whole nother story. But after you get it out, then I went around and I sprayed the rose water all around the house, upstairs, downstairs. And I also sprayed lavender, just wherever I felt like it. I don't think I mentioned this, but on my tray I also had kosher salt. I forgot to mention that. Kosher salt is used as protection against poltergeists, spirit, anything negative. It's very interesting because people will salt their property without even knowing why. I have a brother-in-law who's a pilot, commercial pilot, who salts his property. He doesn't know why. He just salts it. So what you want to do after you spray your rose water, you've gotten the thing out, is you want to put a bowl of salt in the 4 corners of your house, the 4 furthest corners of your house. And then what you can do is you can salt the exterior of your property also in the 4 furthest corners of your property. And you can pray while you're doing that. So you don't have to salt the whole property. You can use kosher salt. You can use Himalayan salt. I use black salt. I know people always equate black with evil, but it's not. There's black tourmaline, which is a wonderful protection crystal. There's all kinds of things. Anyway, that's what happened to me. It was an amazing experience. When I was doing it, it took me 6 hours to do this. But like I said, it was a huge house, huge. And my husband was no help. He wasn't about to get out of bed and walk around and say a prayer. He was sound asleep. That wasn't going to happen. So I did it, and I got done. And I think I started at midnight, and I got done at 6 a.m. I felt so good. And while I was doing it, I did not feel I was shivering in my boots. I really didn't. I felt really empowered, and I felt, like I said, protected. The prayer of protection is, I would say, one of the most important things you need to do. And you need to do that before you start harassing the poltergeist. And again, what I'm telling you is, when a poltergeist is a young poltergeist, when it's been entrenched, you need a lot more professional help. You need something much more advanced. Clergy that specializes in, poltergeist removal, like pest removal. You really need somebody, who is a specialist in that area. And again, you can start in the paranormal community asking around. Because a lot of times in the religious community, I find that they may not take it as seriously as they do in the paranormal community. At least they can steer you into the right direction. If you hear anything out of the ordinary, like knocks, especially if they knock 3 times, or if you hear crashes, like I heard this ceiling fall in, stuff like that. I'm not talking about little things or, tiny little creaks or whatever. But I mean, if you hear something that shouldn't be there, get it checked out. Get it checked out by somebody in the paranormal community, medium or psychic, that can at least tell you whether or not you've got something and then direct you, or use your intuition, because that saved me a lot of times. And I didn't listen to my intuition a lot of times too, and paid for that one. But do be careful. And if you have one that's just starting up, make sure you get your kit together and get in touch with the paranormal community immediately. If you have something entrenched, again, get in touch with the paranormal community. They will help you. They will direct you to the right people. You may not want to get a kit together because you won't know what to do as far as what would be recommended. I'm not sure what would be recommended with something that's been there for years, like the Bell Witch. I don't know how many people have heard of that, but I tend to think that that was not anything but a poltergeist. There are a lot of things that people call spirits that really are poltergeists. And those things are just as troublesome as anything. So really listen to your gut, not only for poltergeists, but for everything else. Or if you can, take intuition lessons and really listen. And I think that should do it. I think that should wrap it up for me. But please be careful, listen, protect yourself. Even say a prayer of protection every morning. Say a prayer of protection every single morning, and say one at night. Include your loved ones. Do whatever you feel is right for you and your family. And that should do it for me. That's my long, sad story.
If you've had a paranormal experience and would like to be a guest on the show, please contact us by going to myparax.com. That's my, para, E, X, Thanks for listening.